Hi everyone, I thought I'd just do a basic walkthrough on how I convert Sims 4 objects into the Sims 3. So just as a disclaimer, I'm a beginner. I might get terminology and things wrong, so if you notice any mistakes or things that can be done better, please let me know in the comments. So there's a few really good tutorials out there already, but I noticed that a lot of them use old versions of Blender and I wanted to try using a newer version, and so far it seems like it is all working perfectly fine. So yeah, I figured I might put this out there and maybe I'll help some people that are brand new to converting CC, or if you just want to convert something really basic. I'm really aiming this at other beginners, so if you already know how to do this, you're probably not going to get anything from this tutorial, just FYI. So I'm going to try and simplify this as much as I possibly can. It is a long process, especially like once you're getting started, because you have to familiarize yourself with each piece of software. So I'm going to try and explain all of the steps as well as I can. But yeah, if you find it overwhelming, just try doing the whole process a few times for a few objects, like maybe non-functional objects. I promise it does get easier, especially once you're familiar with each piece of software like Milkshape and TSL Workshop and Blender. So the programs that you're going to need before you get started are Sims 4 Studio, Blender, TSL Workshop, Milkshape, and a photo editing software. I'm going to be using GIMP, which is free. You can use Photoshop or any other kind of like photo editing software that you've got. The Blender version that I have is 4.2. I think they're currently up to 4.5, but it shouldn't be particularly different to what I've got in terms of like where things are located and how it functions. The version of TSL Workshop that I have installed is the most recent one, so 2.2.119. I have no idea how often they update this, but that's the version that I'm currently on as well. I'm not sure what the differences are between this version and some of the older ones. You will see a lot in other tutorials. They recommend, downloading a specific version of Blender and a specific version of like TSL Workshop. For the purposes of this video and for like basic object creation, I found that the latest version works perfectly fine. So I'm going to convert two items as part of my examples. So the first one is going to be this bag, and the creator is Passy Berry. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. So this is just like a decoration bag. So I'm going to convert that first, and then I'm going to convert a second item that's like a functional object. I'm going to convert a chair from The Sims 4. So we'll start with this one. So I'm going to go ahead and download the package file for this and store it in a folder. Okay, so I've just popped this package file for the ribbon bag in a folder on my desktop. Yeah, so all you need to do is just save a copy of the package somewhere that you can access. So the first step is going to be to open the package in Sims 4 Studio. If you're trying to convert something that's not like a Sims 4 object, you can go to this My Projects section and just find the package file that you want to convert. So here's the bag that I downloaded before, and just click open and it will open this window. So I'll just expand that out. You'll be able to see the object here. You can move around. If you hold down the middle, like the scroll wheel, you can like move this around. If you hold down the right click button, you can rotate it, and yeah, just zoom in by scrolling on the scroll wheel as well. So yeah, we can see this bag here. In the top right, we can see some of the swatches. There's some basic info, so the name of the object, the description, and the price. I usually do like to import the same price, like simoleons, into the Sims 3 version as well, but that's up to you. But the parts that you will need to grab from Sims 4 Studio are going to be the textures, specifically diffuse, and then the meshes. So I'll download the meshes first. So there's going to be different LODs, so this is level of detail. But if there are multiple LODs, just take a look and check before you save all of them. Sometimes Sims 4 creators will only really make them for one, and they won't decrease the level of detail for the other LODs. So I'll just show you this example here. So I've selected LOD 0 high, and we can see the polygons are 2756. And if I switch to LOD 1, it's still 2756. So they've basically imported the same mesh into medium and high detail. So you'll notice, like, if you look through any Sims 4 item that's created by the actual Sims 4 team, they're always going to have a lower poly count for the medium detail. So in this case, I'll just be exporting the high LOD. So just click on Export Mesh, save it where you want. I'm just going to call this TS4 LOD 0. Oops. And click Save. and it will open the folder that you actually saved it in. And then don't worry about the shadows because we can recreate that in TSR Workshop. But you'll go to the texture tab and you want to grab the diffuse texture. So click on export. I usually save it as DDS. You can save it as PNG, but DDS seems to work better with TSR Workshop. I have a lot of issues trying to import PNGs. So DDS, I'm going to call this diffuse. It's swatch number 3. I'll just call it diffuse 3. It doesn't really matter what you call it. And that's going to save in the same folder. So I'm going to minimize Sims 4 Studio for now. I won't close it because later on I will be copying the name and the price. So I will just minimize that. The next step is to open TSR Workshop. What we're trying to do with this is basically find a very similar object from The Sims 3 that we can clone and then replace that clone with the Sims 4 object. So if we go create new project, I'm going to click on object here and then click on next. It's going to take a little while to load. Okay, so it's done loading. The first few things here are Sims 4. So I'm just going to open the Sims 3 version. And we're looking at a decor item. The bag, like it's not like a functional object, it's just going to sit there and look pretty. So I'll expand the decor section. And we can see there's all these different categories of decor. So it doesn't really matter too much which one we choose because we can change the categories that it's going to appear in the catalog later. But usually for something simple, I'll probably clone like a basic piece of decor or a plant. The reason I like using a plant is because I know that there's this particular plant it has swatches, so like it lets you recolor it and add extra swatches in TSR Workshop. Some of the other decor items, like the tissue box, for example, it only really lets you add in one swatch. I'm not sure if there's another way of doing it, but yeah, I just cloned this plant. It's pretty simple. So you can give this a name. So I'm just going to call this ribbon bag. At the moment, I can change that later. But the title, I'm going to grab from Sims 4 Studio. Obviously you can name this whatever you want. And then I normally just add in converted by Count My Clientele, which is obviously my creator name. And this just makes it easier, so when people are like looking through their catalog in The Sims 3 and they go, oh, like I like this item, I want to go find more from the same creator, or I don't like this item, I want to delete it, it helps you find the actual package file in your mods folder. So just helping people out. So then click on next and then OK. So now we've got this lovely mesh of a plant. We've got some basic info on the right hand side, so I'll just make this full screen. We've got the name that we just set here. We've got the description that I set. If you want to edit either of these, just click on the 3 dots on the right hand side. You can pop in your string here and then click on copy to all, and it will copy it to all of these languages. The price here as well, I'm going to update this one, so I'll go back to Sims 4 Studio. I will grab that 450 simoleon price tag and paste it over the top. And then we can look at all the categories that it actually appears in game. So obviously this is a plant and we're going to replace it with a bag, so I don't want it to be in the plant category. Decor is fine, but I'm going to remove it from plants here and I'm going to add it to miscellaneous decor. That should be fine. It will have like room category, so you can select and deselect as you like. So it's probably not really a dining room object. Maybe it could go in a living room, but yeah, bedroom probably fine. I'll leave it there. And room subcategory, I might go, what can I do? Maybe accents. Actually no, I'll do miscellaneous decor. There we go. It's not a build item, so I'll leave that blank and everything else can stay the same. Okay, now that we've updated that, we can go to this mesh tab. And this is similar to Sims 4 Studio where we exported the mesh before. I'm actually going to export the Sims 3 mesh. So I'm going to export this by clicking the box with the red arrow here. And then in the same folder that I had, I'm going to call this TS3 mesh. And then I'm just going to go and save this TSR workshop file. Next, we need to open up the Sims 4 object in Blender. So this is something that we exported from Sims 4 Studio before. When we exported the mesh, I named it ts4 lod0.blend. So we can open up this and it'll open in Blender. We can see our bag here. We can move around, take a look at it. Should be all good. Some objects you will need to scale and like resize to make it fit the Sims 3 game. So I won't show you that in this example, but in the next one with the dining chair I will resize the chair. But for Deco, it's usually fine. I normally just straight up export it. So the whole purpose of opening it in Blender for this is to just then export it as a different file format. So I'm going to go export and export it as a wavefront object. And I'm going to keep the name as ts4 lod0, that's fine. And then you can just close Blender. Now we have to open up Milkshape. And the reason we do this is to then convert that wavefront object from the Sims 4 mesh into a format that TSR Workshop can use. So before I import the Sims 4 mesh, I'm going to import the Sims 3 mesh that I exported from TSR Workshop. So I'm going to go File, Import, and then down the bottom there's TSRW object. And you might need to update some files in your settings for this to actually appear. I can't remember exactly how I did that, but I'll see if I can find a tutorial on how to do that so that it'll appear here. It essentially just requires you to copy some files into a Milkshape folder somewhere, I think. So TSR Workshop, I'm going to import the Sims 3 mesh. And so we can see the plant here looking so beautiful. We can see that it's got two groups here, so if I click on one group and then click on select, we can see what that group is. So for this one, it's the like the rectangle at the bottom, which is basically the drop shadow, and I can click select again to deselect it. And then the second group here is the actual object itself, so this is the plant, and I'll unselect that. So the reason that I opened the Sims 3 mesh in Milkshape is because of this joints tab. What you'll find is that some objects that you clone from Sims 3 will have joints, some of them don't, and that makes it easier, but you just want to check to make sure it does or not. So we can click on this joint here, click on select assigned, and you'll see what mesh is actually assigned to that joint. There might be multiple joints in here too, but hopefully for your purposes there'll only be one, makes it easier. And this is just selected basically the whole plant. So let me deselect that. So I'm going to then go and import the Sims 4 mesh. So Sims 4 mesh is currently in wavefront object. That's what we exported from Blender. So in that bag folder that I saved it in, ts4 lod0.object, I'll open that one and you'll see there's another two groups that have been added here. And I mean, it looks a bit horrible now because I've got a bag on top of a plant here, but if I select this first if I select this first Sims 4 group, we can see it's basically selected another rectangle with a drop shadow, and the next one is the actual bag itself. So awesome, they're in the correct order. I'm going to delete the Sims 3 versions, so delete both of those. If the groups were the other way around, if that rectangle group was actually below the group with the plant, for example, then I would just need to swap the order. So I just need to make sure that rectangle thing is the first group, and then the second group is the actual object that I want to save. So you just want to make sure all of the groups of the things are in the same order as the Sims 3 object. Other tutorials will usually mention that you need to rename these groups. I found that I don't need to do that, and it might be because of the version of TSR Workshop that I'm using. I'm not 100% sure, but if you find that there's like errors popping up for you, then just rename these groups to match the same names as the groups from The Sims 3. Okay, so now we have our Sims 4 bag in here. I'm going to select the group that actually contains the bag mesh, and then I'm going to go to the joints tab, make sure that it's selected, the joint that I want, and then click assign, and that's going to assign this group to this joint. And that's all I need to do, super easy. Now I can export it. So I'm going to scroll down and export it as a TSRW object. So this is the format that TSRW can read. And I'm going to call this TS4 mesh, sure, why not? And we can go back to TSR Workshop here. I'm on the high level of detail. This will be the first one, that's the one that we exported before. So I'm going to replace the high level of detail mesh with our high level of detail mesh from The Sims 4. So that's our TS4 mesh.wso, and I'll click open. And we can see there's a bag there. So it's looking pretty horrible because I haven't replaced the textures, but we've got our object in, which is awesome. The next step is to import the medium level of detail. So this is like a lower poly version of the first one. And you'll notice that when I switch between the two groups, high level of detail has two groups here, and medium level of detail only has one. So in most cases, it just removes the drop shadow. So if I go here, I can see, I'll deselect that bag. It'll be this first like rectangle thing. Usually that's what's deleted when we go to the lower level of detail. So I'm going to delete that, and then I'm going to export this again as a TSRW object, and I'm going to call this TS4 mesh medium. Really doesn't matter what you call it as long as you know which one's which. And then with medium level of detail selected in TSR Workshop, I'm going to go import, and I'm going to import that new mesh. So normally for like a normal object that does actually have a difference between the mesh poly count, so in here, like if this poly count was actually lower than this high version, then I would export each of them separately, so that you'd have, you know, two different versions of the mesh here, where one of them is actually a medium level of detail, but for this bag it doesn't have that, so we'll just use high for both. The next one is the shadow. So you'll notice this is like the shadow of the plant that we had before, but you can update that. So make sure high level of detail is selected, and then this like blue arrow button, click on that one, and we can select, you can either select the whole thing or just the actual like high level of detail object. So you'll notice there's four items. So first one is like high level of detail, second is medium level of detail, and then the bottom two are the shadow level of details here. So I'll select the high detail object, that's the one we want to calculate the shadow from. Click on OK, and you'll see this is like a bag shaped shadow now. And I'll do the same for medium, so I'll go to that button, I'll click on the medium level of detail item, click on OK, and it's replaced our shadow. So I'm going to go back to high level of detail now. So we have our bag. It's not looking particularly nice because it's using a texture from a plant. So the next step is actually going to be to replace the textures that we have here. So if you haven't done any like 3D modeling stuff before, I'll just show an example of like what this texture actually kind of is, because this was brand new to me like a few weeks ago as well. So I have my object here in Blender, and I've just clicked on it, and I'm going to go to edit mode, and then on the right hand side I'm going to click this like UV sync selection, and we'll just open the actual image as well, the diffuse image. So when we were in Sims 4 Studio, we exported this texture file here, and this is actually getting mapped to the mesh. So like this section here, you can kind of see this is the ribbon that's on here, and some of these bits here are like the main parts of the bag. But if you want to know exactly which part maps to which part of the image, you can use this in Blender, kind of makes it a bit easier. So if I like hold if I hover over an item and click on L, it's going to select all of the link items there. So we can see this part of the ribbon is controlled by this part of the image. And the reason I'm showing you this is because in The Sims 3, we can make things recolorable. And in order to make something recolorable, we need to know which section we want to be a certain set of colors. So we're going to probably want, if I just take a look at this bag here, we've got like a lighter color for this ribbon, and then we've got a darker color for the bag itself. And then there's this like kind of gold hardware that we probably don't really need to make recolorable, but we can if we want to. So that would be like 3 different sets of recolorable groups. And so we need to know like which sections of the image are going to be certain colors. And usually you can do it by eyeballing. Like you probably don't really need to go into Blender and open this and take a look at all the groups to work out what maps to what. But if you do need to do that for an object, if the map looks like super confusing, then yeah, you can go in and actually inspect it in Blender. Okay, so in TSR Workshop, we've got 4 different kinds of textures here. So the first one is this overlay, and this is going to be stuff that is not going to be recolorable. So for example, if we wanted the like metal hardware just here to be non-recolorable, then we could like insert an image of just that here. Or it can just be blank if you want the whole thing to be recolorable. The second one is the mask, and this controls like where the recolorable items are. So if there's only one color, it's usually red, that's going to mean that there'll only be one like pattern or color that you can choose from for the item. So like the whole object would be recolored by one like color wheel or whatever you'd call it. The third one's the multiplier. So this is basically like the image itself, but gray. So it works a bit differently to Sims 4. So in Sims 4, we have all of these swatches, and you'll notice this image itself like actually changes color. Like it's got some pinks, it's got some greens, it's got some browns. You need to like actually have a individual like color swatch for it to show up in game. But because we have recolorable stuff in Sims 3, this image, which would be the equivalent of this one, is just going to be grey. And it needs to be grey in order to be recolorable. That's how the game would read it. The last one is the specular map. So this controls like how shiny the object is. I don't really know how to create these, and for most things I don't really want it to be shiny anyway, so you can just replace this with a black image if you're just like starting out and just want to actually insert something. Yeah, that's normally what I do. I normally just make it completely black. And the things down below here, we have our like 3 like recolor, I don't even know what they're called in creator style, where you've got like the ability to select like 3 different parts of the object and recolor them separately. So this is like 3 colored channels, I suppose. All right, so I'm gonna start with the mask. I think that'll be easiest to show. So I'm gonna open the image that we saved in GIMP, and we'll have a go at making like the color channels. So I'll load it without maps on. So there's, for the 3 main color channels, there's like red, yellow, and magenta. So usually you'd start with red. So I'm gonna select all of the parts of the bag that are that like kind of main color, and I probably should have chosen a different color that was a bit different to the ribbon color, but whatever, I've done it now. But basically all of these like kind of pinkish things I want to replace with red. So it doesn't need to be perfect, but you just want to make sure you capture the relevant areas. So I'm gonna fill that. And I'm gonna select a bit more up here, and I'll just add to the selection to make it a bit easier. Okay, so I've selected the red, so that's all the bag area. So I will do the ribbon next. And I'm going to make this yellow. So the first one was red, which was like FF0000. Second one will be yellow, which is FFFF00. And I will color that in. And then the last section is the metal hardware. So I will grab that. And yeah, that's good. And I'll make this magenta. So this is FF00FF. Paint that in. And then the last section, I probably should have made a new layer so I could just paste in the background, but I've done it now. No going back. Okay, so this is our mask. I'm going to export this by going File, Export As, and I'm just going to call it Mask. And I'm going to make sure it saves as a DDS. I usually use DXT5. I just noticed that a lot of the Sims 3 items were in that format, so I figured don't change it, it's probably working. And then for bitmaps, you want to generate bitmaps. And click Export. So we have our mask now. I'm going to import that into TSL Workshop. Click on Mask and done. And so that's replaced this image here. I'm going to actually delete this overlay. So you just click on Make Empty, click on Done, click on No when you delete something like that. And so now we can see we have a kind of grey bag. It's still using the multiplier from the old version of the plant. So I need to replace that next. So I'm going to open the diffuse image again. And what I need to do is just make this grey. So I'm going to go to Colors and Hue Saturation. I'm going to drag saturation all the way down. And we can see it's like a light grey. But if we open the TSL Workshop one, we can see it's a little bit darker. So I'm just going to make it darker. I'm pretty sure there's probably like a proper color that we need to aim for. I don't know, I just kind of eyeball it, and then if it doesn't recolor properly I make it lighter or darker and see how it goes. Might make it slightly darker, that might be okay. And then I'm going to export that, and I normally just name it diffuse grey. It's good enough. Generate bitmaps, DXT5, and then I'm going to go back to TSL Workshop, on Edit, click on Import, and import that grey texture. Cool, so we have a grey bag, lovely. Specular, so I need to replace this next. You can make it empty. I have found with some objects they get like a weird kind of red tinge to it. I'm not sure like what the cause of that is, but yeah, I normally just go and create a black specular. So I'll grab this like black color. I think it's already on proper black there. I'm going to save that, and then I'm going to export it, call that specular, and that's done. And then I can import it into this specular section. Cool. We won't really see any difference in here, but in game it will probably do something. Okay, so we have our 3 color channels, but we haven't set them up down below yet. So in the pattern section here, red is going to correspond to the first one, yellow I think corresponds to the second one, and then magenta is the third. Hopefully I've got that right. But you'll see that only the first is enabled in this one because the original plant that we cloned from only had 1. So I'm going to turn all of them on. I'm going to make them all true. And it's going to look a bit more grey and depressing because these are currently grey. But I'm going to go in and edit this. So I think this is using a kind of rock. you can choose fabric. I found like I really struggle to like pick one that actually looks nice, so I normally just go to, super lazy, I normally go to miscellaneous and select solid color and just see how it kind of looks. Because in Blender we didn't like bake a new texture, it's still got all of the Sims 4 like textures in there. So basically what that means, like this kind of like fabricy material is like baked into the image itself, and we didn't remove that. So there is a way to do that in Blender. Like you can bake a new version of this image without the actual like painted on stuff that the Sims 4 object originally has. I might make a different video on that. I've only really recently just learned how to do that. But for most Deco items you can kind of get away with just leaving it as is. But yeah, let me know if you want a video on that. I can try and record one. So yeah, we've got our white bag there. Let's try and make this a bit more interesting maybe. Let's try that for the moment. Doesn't look too great, we can change it in a second. But we'll take a look at the second pattern and see what this changes. So if I just make that bright yellow. Okay, so that one's controlling the ribbon, and then this third one at the bottom, you can make that a bright blue. So that's controlling like the metal hardware here. So what I do sometimes if I want to try and match it to like the original Sims 4 swatch is I take a screenshot of this section here and then I paste that into Paint, and then I like grab the colors off. There's probably a better way of doing it, but yeah, it works for me. So here I'm just gonna like go to this, maybe I'll choose this kind of nice color here, and I will grab the RGB. So I'm gonna drag that to the side, open up TSL Workshop on the side here, and in this one that controls the bag color, I'm gonna replace the RGB values. So this one is 195, 169, and then 172. Cool. So it never looks the same as Sims 4, but you can get it close enough. Next one will be this like creamy color. So I'm going to replace this with the creamy color. So now we've got that, and then the last one will be a kind of goldish color. Oops, that's horrible. I'm not really that good at finding a gold. Let's see. It's more of like a brownie kind of color. Maybe a bit darker and slightly more orangey. That might be okay. Good enough. Cool, so we've got our first like swatch, and if we click on this drop down, there's actually multiple swatches. So the number of swatches depends on the item. I would delete any extras so that we can clear all these other images. Just delete that. And then with this nice one that we created, I normally just duplicate that and then create like another swatch. You don't have to, obviously, like it's The Sims 3, so people can recolor it in game if they want. But yeah, if you wanted multiple swatches, this is easy to do. So now we have our kind of pinkish one and a blue one. I kind of like the blue actually. Okay, so now we have our swatches, we have a mesh, like bag's looking pretty good. We want to export it into the game. So there's two ways of doing that. One way is exporting as a Sims 3 pack. So you'd go File, Export, and then Sims 3 pack, and then save it that way. But if you want it as a package file, you can go to Edit, Project Contents, and then just click on Export to Package. And then you can name it whatever you want. and click on save. So that's all it is. Just need to test it in game, and if there's issues with it, you can obviously come back, like open up this .wrk, so workshop file, and play around with some of this, and then export it again, and then just try it in the game again. So let's go try our second object, and we'll repeat this whole process again, and maybe I'll add little bits of extra information here and there. Okay, so the second object I'm going to convert is a Sims 4 object. So I'm going to do a dining chair. So if you want an object that's actually from the Sims 4 game, like one of the Maxis EA objects, just go to this object button, and it's going to load all of the ones that you've got from all of the expansion packs that you do have. So I'm going to filter by comfort and dining chairs. And obviously there is a lot of chairs here, but I think I'm going to convert one from the My Wedding Stories pack. I don't know if anyone has converted this yet. Probably somebody has, since it's a pretty old pack. But yes, you click on the one that you want, click on next, and it will ask you where to save the package. So I'm going to save it in this chair folder. So I'm just going to call this TS4. And it's going to open the same way you had before with the bag. So I can take a look at the chair, I can flick through the available swatches. Cool, looks good. So same as before, we need to export our mesh. So I'm going to take a look at this LOD 01, the high detail. We can see there's 406 polygons in this, so it's a lot lower poly than that bag that we looked at. And if we look at LOD 1, we can see that this has dropped to 322. So the level of detail is actually different between them. So I'm going to export both of them. So click on export mesh. I'm going to call this TS4 LOD 0. And then I'm going to select LOD 1, export. I'm going to call it TS4 LOD 1. Cool, I've got both of the meshes. I'm going to go to the texture tab, and I will click on export with diffuse selected. I'm going to call it diffuse 5 because that's the 5th swatch, not that it really matters. Cool, so we have our Sims 4 object save. So now we need to find a chair from Sims 3, so specifically a dining chair. So I'm going to open TSR Workshop back up. I'm going to go create a new project again, click on object, next, and grab Sims 3. I'm going to go comfort dining chairs, and I'm going to pick one from the base game again. I know this horrible plastic one is the base game one, so I'll click next. I'm going to call this My Wedding Stories chair. I'm going to grab the name from Sims 4 Studio again and paste it in there. Okay, so we've got our Sims 3 mesh. I'm going to replace the price, so it's $100 in Sims 4 Studio. Let's put in 100 simoleons, and all of these categories should be fine, like comfort and everything, because we've selected a dining chair, so we don't need to go and update any of these, but if you want to, feel free. We've got our textures tab, which we'll need to replace in a bit, and our meshes tab. I will need to export the mesh again, so click on the box with the little red arrow. I'm going to go to the chair. I'm going to call this TS3 mod 0. Click on save. And the difference between this one and the Deco object was, I know that dining chairs have a different height in Sims 3 and Sims 4, so I will actually need to import the Sims 3 version into Blender and then scale the Sims 4 chair so that the seat height is the same height, so that like Sims aren't like floating or like sitting like under here. So I've exported that. I'm going to open Milkshape. and I'm going to go import TSRW object, find my chair, open that. We've got our beautiful looking chair in here. This time we don't need to like worry about the groups or the joints or anything because I'm just exporting, but I'll go File, Export, and then convert that to a wavefront object. And I'm just going to call this TS3 mod 0. So that's going to be dot object now, so that it can be imported into Blender because Blender doesn't understand the TSRW like format. Then I'm going to open the Sims 4 mesh, so TS4 LOD 0. We've got our beautiful Sims 4 chair. So now I'm going to import the Sims 3 one into the same file. So File, Import, Wavefront Object, grab the TS3 LOD 0, and we can see it in here. Oh, they're actually the same height. I swear I've done this before and sometimes they're the wrong height. I found this with some CC chairs. Sometimes the height of the seat is like too low or too high compared to Sims 3, and you just want to make sure that your Sim's not like floating in midair or like merged with a chair when they're actually in the Sims 3 once you've converted it. So we can see that it is the same height, so I don't actually need to do anything with this. But for example, if this Sims 3 chair, like if the seat was this high, then you'd want to make sure the Sims 4 version that you're converting matches the same height. So I would click on scale and then just drag this up so that the height is the same there. Or you can increase the scale of the entire thing so that the whole thing moves. But yeah, it really depends on the mesh. Just like play around with it and do what looks best. But yeah, I can remove that Sims 3 one now. I can just delete that straight out because it's the same height, so it doesn't matter. So I'm just going to export this into wavefront object. Yes, I'm going to do that. I'm going to call this TS4 LOD 0. And I'm going to exit. And then I'm going to open LOD 1. And I'm going to do the same because I don't need to scale this. I don't need to do anything with it. I can just click on export, wavefront object. I'll call it TS4 LOD 1. Perfect. So we've got this chair here now. We can do the same as we did before and take a look at the groups. So in this case, the first group is actually the chair mesh instead of the drop shadow like rectangle thing. So we need to make sure that the chair mesh for Sims 4 is going to be the first group, and then the second group is that rectangle thing. And if we go to the joints tab, we can see there's one joint here. So we can click on select assigned, and we can see that the chair itself is assigned to it. So awesome, let's remove that. And then I'm going to delete the Sims 3 mesh and import the Sims 4. So file, import, wavefront object. I'm going to go to chair, LOD 0. And we've got our chair. But if I select this group, you can see that the Sims 4 chair is actually the second group and we want it to be the first group. So I'm going to click on it, I'm going to click on up, and that will move it to the top here. So if I click on the second one, that's going to highlight the drop shadow mesh. So we'll select the chair, we'll go back to joints, make sure this first joint is selected, and then click assign, and then we can export it. So I'll export as TSRW object, so I just need to scroll down a bit. Name this TS4 LOD 0. And then I can delete both of these, and now I need to import the LOD 1 version. So import wavefront object TS4 LOD 1. Select the chair, that's still the second, so I'm going to move it to be the first group. I'm going to go to the joints tab, I'm going to click assign, and then I'm going to go export TSRW object, save it as TS4 LOD 1. Don't need to save that, don't need it anymore. So we can go into our mesh tab here.
I've got high level of detail selected, so I can click on this green arrow on the box to import a new mesh. So I'm going to import LOD 0 into here. We can see that our chair mesh is in, and medium, import LOD. Okay, so when I did the medium level of detail in Milkshape, I forgot to delete the drop shadow, so there's only one mesh in this one. So let's go back to Milkshape. I'm going to import the Sims 3 object again, so this is the Sims 3 chair. I'm going to delete both of those, and I'm going to import the Sims 4 chair again, the LOD 1 version. And then this time I'm going to delete the rectangle drop shadow thing. So now we've got the one group. I'm going to select that, assign it again, and export again as TSRW object. And now I can close it. Okay, medium level of detail. LOD 1, success, amazing. Okay, so now we can do the shadow again. So high level of detail, click on the rotating arrow things. Let's just click on both. I think the chair is probably this 382 vertex one, so we'll click on that. Cool, we've got our chair mesh and medium. Let's go to the medium detail object here, and we've got our medium shadow. Cool. So textures. Overlay, again, we don't really need anything. I'll just make that empty. Click on no, and let's do our mask. So I'm going to open that diffuse image that we saved from Sims 4 Studio in GIMP. Cool. So this one has a seat cushion, and then the rest of it is this wood color. So I'm going to make two recolorable sections. So let's do red as the wood, and the seat cushion can be another color. I guess that can be yellow. So I'm just going to create another layer. Doesn't really matter what it's called. I'm actually going to start with the yellow cutout because that'll be easier, and then I can just paste on the background the red color. I'm sure there are better ways to edit images like this. I am definitely not the most talented at this, but it gets the job done. Alright, I'm gonna paste yellow in here, and then I'm gonna click on the one behind it and make that red. And I'm gonna flatten that and export it as mask. Make sure it's DXT5 and generate bitmaps is on. Cool. And then, so we've got our mask, we need our multiplier and specular as well. So for multiplier, again, I just need to make this gray, so colors, hue, saturation, decrease saturation all the way down. This looks kind of okay. I might make it a little bit darker. That looks fine. I'm gonna export that as diffuse gray. And then the last one that I'm going to do is the specular. So again, I'm just going to make this entire thing black, and then we export that as specular. Okay, so now we can import everything. Let's import our mask. And multiplier. And specular. Cool, so we have a very white looking chair. And as I mentioned before, we haven't baked a new texture, so all of the wood grain from The Sims 4 is going to show here. Again, if you want to get rid of that so that it's properly recolorable with different patterns and things and your own kind of wood grain, then yeah, you can do that in Blender, but that's not part of this basics video. So I'm just gonna make this like a kind of brownish color. I'm gonna stick with the like plain pattern. That looks okay. We can see there's like a slight grainy wood grain texture. We probably could get away with just choosing an actual wood pattern, but I can't be bothered. And I think I've screwed up the mask a little bit because you can see some of the wood is like bleeding through to the image, to the cushion here, like on the corners. So yeah, I would just probably need to go back into this and just like fix up where I've done the yellow boundaries. And for the seat cushion, maybe do something a bit more creamy. I think it's a bit too light, and it's probably the multiplier, like this image here, like this part where the seat cushion actually is, I think is a bit too light for it to be properly recolorable. So I'm gonna go to my diffuse gray. We can see this section here. I'm just gonna like roughly select it and do a really basic ass job. And I'm gonna go colors. I'm gonna make that bit match the rest. Cool. So I'm gonna go back into TSL Workshop and then import this one. And let's see if, like, when I click done, we'll see if this actually changes to like more of a yellowish color. And I do want to replace. And yeah, so now we can see it's actually been recolored. So yeah, you might need to just play around. If it doesn't come out right the first time, try again. Just try lightening or darkening the gray. So I might make this maybe a bit lighter. That's probably fine. I think that's okay. Cool. I'm gonna delete the other swatches. And I might make one more swatch. I'm not sure if I want to go for a darker wood or maybe an even lighter one. Maybe like a more... Let's try that. It looks kind of pale and lifeless, but let's add a color on the seat. Maybe like a pink. Why not? No, that looks terrible. Maybe a green? Green's always a winner. Sure, why not? Good enough. Yeah, so obviously this is not perfect, it's just for the tutorial. Normally I wouldn't like finish something with horrible edges like that, but yeah, it does the job. So yeah, I've got all my swatches, they're all set up. Ooh, I realized I forgot to actually check the like which channels were turned on, so thankfully the object we cloned already had 2 that were turned on, so this enabled is true and this enabled is true, and then the bottom one is false. You just want to make sure that the number that are enabled matches the number of colors that you have in the mask. So I'm going to export that. So edit, project contents, export to package. Okay. And then I can call this whatever I feel like. And we're done, so we can try these in game. So yeah, that's really all there is to it. It obviously takes a bit of practice and there's a lot of like trial and error involved. I'm sure like if I make a tutorial in like another couple of years when I've like done a variety of different objects, it'll probably be easier. But yeah, you'll run into issues. I've definitely made a whole lot of horrible things, but you'll get there, I promise. Yeah, it's not really hard, it's just kind of like a long process, especially to get started and get familiar with the actual software itself. So yeah, I probably will do another tutorial at some point. like on maybe baking in Blender, but yeah, if there's something that you guys want to see, like I'm definitely not an expert, but if it's something that I know how to do, I can definitely try and make a video on it. But yeah, I probably will do one on how to use and install the Cloud UI recolor tool. So if you're interested in making like a custom Cloud UI, I will try and make some proper instructions for that in a video. But yeah, if you want to see something else CC related, let me know. Kind of open to doing whatever. But yeah, thanks for watching, guys. Hopefully that was helpful. Let me know if you've got any feedbacks or comments, or if I did something wrong and there's a better way to do something, please do let me know in the comments. I do want to get better at this. Like it's been a lot of fun for me, but I know I'm like still a beginner, so really open to feedback if you guys have any for me. But yeah, thanks guys. Bye.